It's the Boy Junior Show!
Alrighty. Well, welcome to the Boy Junior Show, two very wonderful members of Qbomb. Shall we all go around and say our name, our favorite color, and the last thing we cried about?
Oh boy. I'm Izzy Deluxe. Favorite color is probably red. Last thing I cried about was probably that Mr. Rogers documentary. That shit made me weep.
You want to go next?
I'm Rem. Red. Yeah, I mean, red everywhere. Yeah, and geez, it's not like a fun story. I recently lost a family member, so probably that.
Wow, that's awful. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's actually sad. I should have gone second, really. My answer's stupid.
I didn't even think of anything for mine. Well, I'm Erica. In case there's anybody who was still under the impression my first name was Boy and my last name was Junior.
It's not?
I think my favorite color is kind of this blue on my walls. I think I always go back to that.
That's a nice color.
What's the last thing I cried about?
Really think about it.
I think the last thing I cried about was like I was actually like in hysterics laughing about like a post, you know, when it's like really, really late and everything is funny. And I think I just came across like a really funny post that was like not as funny when I saw it the next day. And I was like, whoa, I was in tears about this.
It's like when you're really high and you write down like ooger booger and you laugh a lot and you're like, why the fuck was this funny?
Or like you think you have like a brilliant idea for lyrics. Like I do this when I'm like about to fall asleep and I'm like, wait, don't fall asleep yet. I have such a good idea.
Yeah.
I write something in my notes app and I come back to it and I'm like, what?
Whoa,
yeah.
Time rhymes with rhyme?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I do a thing where I'll come up with something and I have to, or like in the middle of the night sometimes, and I have to, while I'm basically asleep, have to do a little mental check of like, is this actually worth like getting my bright ass phone screen out for?
Yes.
Or is this going to be stupid? Sometimes it is true. Sometimes it is worth it. And then I'm glad I wrote it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Both things are equally valid.
Yeah.
And beautiful. So to start off, I always just, you know, have kind of just let the conversation go wherever it goes, by just starting off, usually asking the things about your music and creative stuff that I realize I don't know yet and I want to know. So I'm going to start off simple with, how did Qbomb come to be?
Ram, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Izzy and I have been collaborating on music and a lot of like art stuff for ages. We've known each other for like 15 years now.
Wow,
Yeah.
cool.
And like, you know, it started with animation, then it moved on to music. We did some like chiptune stuff together for a while. And then Izzy moved out to California. He was in Chicago area.
Yeah.
When he came out here, you know, we decided we wanted to do something. You know, it was never a plan with that other project to actually play anything live. So we decided to make something that you could actually like play with human instruments and like people. So we wrote something a lot simpler, a lot more performable, and that was Qbomb.
Cool.
So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Did everyone start out in Chicago?
No. Well, I'm from there. I grew up there, and then I've been in LA since like 2014.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I always wanted to do music. Been working in animation most of my life, but yeah, Rem and I have been collaborating for ages, and but yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it started off as something really simple, and it was punk out of necessity, out of like, we need, because we basically had a 6-minute set at our first show, and so we were like, 6 minutes, like, what are we gonna write? So we just wrote 3 really short songs, and that was Buzzkiller, Insania, and Trashbot, Build a Robot Out of Trash. And yeah, and then from there they kept getting longer, and then we have a song that's 5 minutes long now. It's not punk, not very punk at all. Oops
prog punk.
Yeah, actually, honestly, yeah, kind of.
I think you invented a new genre.
I think we did.
At least one.
At
At least one genre, yeah.
In my mind, you have now made 2 genres. You are pioneers of 2 entire genres. Congratulations.
Let's think of what they are. We got hyperpunk. We got prog punk. We have like polka punk in there, I think, because Poison Pop is pretty polka.
Yeah.
Can we claim that? I don't
No,
think
I don't think we
really claim
can.
that.
I think Gogo Bordello might have.
Yeah, they beat us to that.
I'm trying to think what else, but yeah, we got to keep innovating.
Yeah, you started down this path. It's a spiral staircase down from here.
It's like a MC Escher staircase.
Yes.
And we're falling down it.
Yeah.
Just perpetually, just continuously falling down.
Now for anybody watching who perhaps this is your first introduction, there are what, 6 members in the live band?
Yeah, 6. Absurd amount.
Could you tell me more about how that happened?
Yeah, I think I could speak to that because I think that was my fault. But it started as just me and Rem being like, what can we do with the 2 of us?
Yeah.
And honestly, the first 2 songs we wrote for sure were very like minimal for that reason. But I don't know how to play anything except drums. I have an electric drum set over here with a puppet on it. Yeah, and so I was like, well, but I want to like perform. Like I like being a front man. I don't want to have to be burdened by an instrument, nor could I even play one if I wanted to. And so we started bringing people in. We brought our friend Ari Atomic in to do guitar, and then some other friends. We had a different arrangement in the beginning, and then just kind of started filling in slots where we felt like we needed it. Like it's like, well, we need somebody to play synth. We've had 3 different people try that, including Rem, and ultimately we landed on Jake, who's great and adds a lot from the writing standpoint. Jordy also started on keys, on synth, but then we kind of rotated her into bass, and then Rem is now in this fucked up monster of a bass guitar. It's basically guitar, but it's bass.
Bass guitar.
Talk about your rig, Rem.
Yeah, I run I can't play guitar to save my life, so I still play bass, but I pitch it up and then put a bunch of fuzz and crazy stuff on it, so it gives it sort of that Death from Above, Royal Blood kind of sound.
Ooh, yeah,
but without the low end, so I can stay out of the actual bassist's hair. And yeah, we call it grind bass. It's just based off of some like really nasty chiptune sounds that we would build.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's worth mentioning is that like originally we wrote most of our songs in this old obscure chiptune software called Musagi, because that was like our roots. Our project before this back in 2009 was called Gamboozle, and it was like a chiptune hip hop concept thing, and it was really good. I'm still really proud of it. But we just kept going in that same process. But we've tried to move away from it since then. But yeah, everything was in chiptune, and so all of our instruments were labeled like this will be bass, this will be guitar, and then we had this one that was called grind bass that is hard to translate into actual instruments, but I think we've done all right.
That's very interesting. The way that something like a new innovation came out of like literally changing genres and like kind of changing mediums in a way. That's something I really enjoy about the sound is like there's songs and moments where I feel like it's towing the line between being something based in electronic music and being something based in rock music and punk music. I mean, I guess that is how you get the term hyperpunk, and that's how it comes to be. But I love that. I love a good fuzzy thick bass.
Yeah, that's becoming our signature. Like part of our signature sound, I think, is that bass. But yeah, there's something nice about writing in chiptune. I really believe in that limitation breeds creativity.
Oh yeah.
And Yeah, and so because when you sit down, and Rem is the primary like music writer, so he can speak to that process more. But even from my perspective, like having a blank canvas is like it's awful. Like you don't know, where are you gonna go? So if you limit your color palette essentially to just bleeps and bloops, and you aren't worried about tone and all these other things, harmonics. If it's just like a melody, and if it works in chiptune, it's gonna hopefully translate to regular instruments.
Yeah.
So I always felt really liberated by that. It's just like, yeah, let's just make this chiptune that sounds good, and then I would sing over it in the car for hours and hours and hours to figure out the vocal melodies on top, and then we take it into actual instruments. Yeah, it works for us.
How has the process changed since adding more members?
Well, I mean, the process opens up to more people. Some of our bigger songs, Everything Is Fine was written in the room with everybody, for the most part. We kind of came up with the core of it, and then I took it home and made the chiptune version of it backwards from our usual process.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and a few of them were actually written by our keyboardist, Jake.
Nice.
So it's a little bit of a letting go of the reins kind of thing, but we've got a good crew, so it's all right it feels okay to do that.
Yeah. There was a process of like teaching the band and then trusting the band, because I think that, in my opinion, like if we hadn't established what we want to do up front, I think it would have been a little hard to have like a consistent, cohesive sound, whatever style. And so it was mostly Rem in the beginning, mostly me and Rem writing this stuff. And then once we had a foundation of like, hey guys, like you've been here for a while, this is what Qbomb is. Then people started contributing, and then it wasn't even, there was no question whether or not we should keep doing it, because it's like, oh, okay, like now we have the instruction booklet, and now everyone else can contribute to it. And I don't ever want to limit other people's input, because I think that you get the best of the best. Like everyone is contributing their best, and so we can kind of figure out what's going to work for the band as a whole. But it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, so far it's just been about like, even if something doesn't quite fit the mold when we receive it, all it takes is a little bit of filtering and a little bit of like working on it with the two of us to make it into something that feels Qbomb. Easy Way Out, one of the songs on the album, it started off pretty much similar to what it is now, but we made a few little tweaks here and there to make it sound more, I guess, aggressive than it was.
I'll say what it is. Yeah, it was because Jake. I that was an interesting process, because I had a song in mind. I had a sound in mind, and I had been listening to they call it Gorillaz, but it's Damon Albarn. The Damon Albarn cover of the XX. What is that song called? Whatever. There's a cover of an XX song that he did that's really good, and it has this nice, really like soft bell kind of melody to it. It's oh my god, I'm looking up while I talk.
It's not intro, is it? Intro is like the most popular one.
No, actually no. But I'll figure it out. Crystallized is the song. It's really good. Look it up. He really, I think it's better than the original. But I was really into that song, and I was like, Big Easy, can you write like a synth line that is very moody and has this sort of feel? And then like a month later, he's like, I wrote a whole song. He's like, oops, wrote a whole song. And I was like, this is really good. I'm not sure if it's a Qbomb song.
Yeah. But
I had to think on it, and then I was like, no, it absolutely can be. I'll just fucking scream bloody murder at the end of it. And it felt like that was the piece that was missing.
Yes.
And it makes I think it made the song better, but that song is 99% Jake. Just a little Izzy yell, just a little sprinkling, just to tie it all in.
You mentioned doing like having a session and then taking ideas from that session and putting them into chiptune format. Is that a frequent part of the process of writing? And would you ever do a chiptune version? of all the songs?
Oh, Rem.
We have a chiptune version of all the songs because that
I
was part of
was
the writing
wondering.
process.
You,
And
you
they're
mentioned that, and
very
I'm like,
different.
this sounds like a remix album.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have that in the bank. Basically, we need to polish up a few things because some of the songs didn't go into chiptune at all, like especially the ones that we didn't write, the ones that Jake wrote.
Yeah.
So I have to go in and make a quick little chiptune version of that, which takes a day or two, but it's work that you gotta plan out. But yeah, most of the album we already have ready as chiptune. We need to maybe find somebody to mix it for us because the program that we use is a little bit rough. Its BPM counter is kind of an approximate thing. It doesn't really stick to it. It's based on your clock speed on your PC. So if anything's happening in the background or you have too many instruments going, it'll actually mess with the BPM just a little bit. We were banking on actually keeping some of those sounds in the final product, but they won't like sync up, and it was too much work to have our producer at the time just, can you fix this for us? And
Yeah,
it didn't end up sounding right, so we ended up sampling those sounds and putting it into another DAW. And
that makes sense.
yeah, but yeah, we do have a bunch of them, and they sound very different, like the prototype versions of them. Mostly because I get so bored with things, I can't repeat things in songs. I have a block on doing that a lot. So whenever something's happening once or twice, I have to like change it up immediately for the next repetition of it. So there's a bunch of lines and like parts to those songs that never made it to the final product.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really felt like an expanded version of some of the ideas in the album.
Yeah. I mean, that's also kind of part of our process, I think, is that Rem is really good at generating just raw ideas. And a lot of the time, because Rem is very into prog, like Mars Volta, and
Nice.
name some other bands that you're into.
Well, I mean, as far as prog goes, pretty much the Mars Volta. I guess Thank You Scientist is a bit proggy. They're more on the what's that, Coheed and Cambria side of things.
Right.
But
yeah, it's a lot of really complicated ongoing melodies. And I try to kind of I try to find the hooks, I try to find the hooks and the sort of stuff that like is gonna stick out. I love repeating shit. And so that is our ongoing compromise. Is it's like, hey, you had a really good, like this right here, this like 5-second bit, fucking brilliant. Like, let's take this and make it the hook, make it, repeat it 20 times. But Rem is always willing to go along with it. So bless him.
I think that's how you get a really nice balance. I mean, that's the beauty of collaboration, right? Like,
yes,
put the strengths up against the other strengths, and have
a
unstoppable force meets a movable object. Only like not actually, because that's the definition of like not.
Yeah, that's not collaborating. That's the opposite of collaborating.
Unstoppable force meets a movable object, but instead of like nothing happening, they like no.
It budges slightly. That's just trying to make anything happen.
That's how that works, though. If something is truly unstoppable and truly immovable, they just wouldn't interact. They would just phase through.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
But yeah, it's more of like a sounding board thing, like I'll have 1,000 ideas, and of those, 5 might be good, and I might disagree and say like 50 of them are good, and I'll just get to pocket the ones that don't really resonate, and then really like, a month later I'll listen back and be like, what was I thinking? But it's good to have somebody whose taste you trust and who you're able to show, obviously some of the ideas are bad. Some of it would be embarrassing to show to like a wide audience, but I'm not afraid of, I guess, failing when it's just between me and Izzy. Like it's easy to share these things because I know the worst I'm going to get is like, not great.
In some ways, that's like, I want to toot your horn. Like, I think that's a superpower that not a lot of people have, and the not having a fear of failure. And I think that if I'm going to put out some like advice into the world, is like, that's your best ally, is not being afraid of failure. Because with music writing, and Erica, you can speak to it too, it's just like, you got to just shit ideas out and know that like a lot of them are just not going to be good. But just in sheer quantity, like some of them will. And yeah, we've built up a trust over the last, 15 years. And I never want to, and I'll say also this, none of Rem's ideas are bad. it's more just, I'm sure he's going to be harder on himself. None of them are bad. It's just like, what's the best of the best, and also what's the most appealing, because I love pop music, and and if not, and even if I don't listen to a lot of it, because I don't, I love the idea of it. I love the sort of
Yeah.
there is sort of a science to it, right? Like there's a reason why there's formulas, and why why we keep hearing the same shit over and over again. It's because there is kind of a formula. And I feel like I'm a little clued in on it. I don't think I'm Max Martin or anything by any chance, but by any stretch of the imagination. But I do feel like I have a good feeling for what would be fun to listen to.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the filter that we put stuff through, is like Rem has these awesome ideas, and then I'm like, this is great. It's going to be a little exhausting after a while. It's just like figuring out how a listener's ears would perceive it.
Right. You pick out the stuff that's going to be the most fun one to shout in a crowd.
That's very true. Yeah, and I think also very visually, and because I'm an artist, and so I think of things very like narratively and theatrically, which is why we're a very theatrical band. Because it's like, it's not just how is it gonna sound as a song, it's how is it gonna feel, like how is it gonna feel when we play it to a crowd? What are the moments? I always look for moments.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
You gotta find those moments.
Interesting. The more you take it into, like, when you get in the habit of playing live and you start to like have that in your mind as well, and like that's also a deciding factor, because I've made stuff that I'm like, I don't know if I would ever do this live, versus now that I'm playing a lot of live shows again, I'm like, everything is like, would this potentially be like the banger that people mosh to? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always in the back of my mind. Near the end of that album, we weren't as worried about it. I think it became more just like, what's the most interesting thing we can do. Like our song Million AD is the 5-minute one, and it is a beast, and we were never like, this will be fun to play live. It was just like, this will be fun to listen to. That was a different approach. But we did learn to play it, and turns out it's really fucking fun to play live, and people get excited. So sometimes you create a framework, and sometimes you destroy it and see what happens when you're not worried about it.
Frameworks to destroy the frameworks.
You're getting it.
Do most or any or all members also have other creative outlets, musically or otherwise, I suppose, besides the band?
Yes. Rem, go first.
Yeah, sure. I pretty much put everything into the band. I started wanting to go into animation and art, and I got really discouraged going into it because I don't really have very, very solid motor skills when it comes to like penmanship. So it was an uphill battle for me. I ended up kind of giving up on that, but luckily we had the music stuff going, and that kind of I don't know. I took to that a lot more naturally than I could with visual art.
Yeah.
Our other members, several of them do work in the industry. One of them is a draftsman for like an engineering firm, who's like also kind of interested in the animation and story writing and things like that. And then Jake is a writer. So like trying to get into writing rooms and things like that. He's done a few pitches to networks and everything. And of course, Izzy here has a long history.
I do. Well, I was going to say, first of all, you are doing scoring on the side, which is
hell yeah.
Yeah, not really Qbomb related. I mean, music is definitely your main thing, but it's a different animal.
Yeah, I guess it's a different output. I don't think of it the same way I would a Qbomb song.
Exactly. Yeah.
Scoring.
But yeah. No.
That's really neat that you're also in that world.
Scoring also pays the bills once you get really into that world. So 3 of us work in animation and TV, and that's how I met Jordy and Ari as we were working together at Nickelodeon. And Qbomb has deep roots at Nickelodeon because I met those two there. We played our first show at a Nickelodeon talent show called Nickapalooza. Yeah, that's a key detail I think we missed. Is like that our first gig was a Nickelodeon talent show, and I was like, well, this is probably the safest first show you could possibly have. You know, like it's not like a dive bar where you're gonna get booed and have a bottle thrown at your head. It was just our coworkers. And so it was really fun. And we opened for Tom Kenny, who's the voice of SpongeBob.
Oh, cool.
It kind of just happened that way, but yeah. And so yeah, I've had a long history of it. And the tricky thing is separating the two, because it's like I feel like they're two separate worlds for me. Yeah. And so yeah, you know, Qbomb is a chance to have a different sort of persona and a different I wear stupid shit like this, you know. It's not so it's been really good to kind of unpack a lot of like insecurities and a lot of all kinds of brain bad things.
Brain bad things, we love them.
Brain bad things.
What's up, everybody? It's Boy Jr. coming at you live from my floor. Thank you so much for checking out my interview with Qbomb. If you want to see the rest of the interview where we do silly little rapid fire questions, you can see the whole episode of the Boy Jr. show on my Patreon. It's patreon.com/boyjr. There is also some fun bonus stuff like me ranting and spilling my guts. Stripped down performances of some of my songs. I've got other covers, songwriting challenges, and the most fun part is that you get to pick what happens on the next episode of the show. You can always leave your comments for suggestions of what you want to see, guests, topics, songs you want me to do. It's all on the table. Thanks so much for checking it out, and we'll see you next time. Bye.